My name is Ethan Cole, and if you had asked me once what betrayal looked like, I would have told you it was loud, explosive, screaming fights, slamming doors. I was wrong. Real betrayal is quiet. It smiles at you. It pours you coffee in the morning. It sleeps next to you at night. And then one day, you wake up and realize everything you owned, everything you protected, everything you believed in, is already gone. It started on a normal morning. The kind of morning you don't remember later because nothing feels important at the time. Sunlight came through the kitchen windows of our penthouse, washing the marble counters in gold. The city was alive below us, distant and small, like it could never touch us up here. Lena stood by the counter, scrolling on her phone, her hair loosely tied back the way I always liked. She looked calm, comfortable, like someone with nothing to hide. "Ethan," she said casually, not even looking up, "we need to talk about something later today." Those words didn't scare me then. They should have. But when you love someone, you don't hear warning bells. You hear trust. We had been married for 7 years. 7 years of building a life that looked perfect from the outside. The penthouse we lived in wasn't just expensive, it was personal. Worth over $2.5 million. Yes, but more than that, it was built from my family's legacy. My grandfather had started the real estate firm with nothing but stubborn pride and tired hands. My father expanded it, and I protected it. That penthouse was part of that story. So were the Heirlooms watches, documents, artwork, things you couldn't replace even if you had all the money in the world. Lena knew that. She knew what those things meant to me. Or at least I thought she did. That afternoon, she suggested we meet with a lawyer. She said it the same way someone suggests picking up groceries. "It's just planning," she said. "Financial clarity. You're always talking about protecting the future. This is how grown couples do it." Her tone was warm, reasonable, loving, and that's the dangerous part. When manipulation sounds like care, you don't defend yourself. You open the door wider. The lawyer's office was modern and clean. Too clean. Glass walls. Neutral colors. A place designed to make you feel safe. The man who greeted us was confident, polite, sharp. Lena introduced him easily, like they'd known each other forever. "He's helped some of my friends," she said. "Very trustworthy." I remember sitting there, hands folded, listening to words that sounded important but felt empty. Asset protection, streamlining ownership, contingency planning. Everything framed as prevention, as responsibility, as love. The papers were thick, heavy, serious looking. I skimmed them, not because I didn't care, but because I trusted her. Because she sat next to me, her hand on my arm, nodding along like we were a team. "Sign here," the lawyer said gently. And here, I hesitated once, just once. Something in my chest tightened, like a quiet voice trying to speak. Lena leaned closer. "Ethan," she whispered, smiling, "it's just paperwork. We're married. What's mine is yours, remember?" So I signed. That was the moment my life split in two. The moment before I knew, and the moment after, when everything slowly began to fall apart. At first, nothing changed. That's how traps work. They don't snap immediately. They wait. Weeks passed. Then months. Lena became different, not cold, not distant, just controlled, calculated. She started asking questions she never asked before. About accounts, about access, about details she'd never cared about. I told myself I was imagining it. Then came the fights. Small at first, harmless. Who forgot to call? Who came home late? Who didn't listen? Normal marriage stuff, I thought. Until one night, during an argument that felt sharper than the rest, she said something that made my stomach drop. "You don't actually own everything you think you do," she said calmly. The room went silent. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked. She shrugged, like it didn't matter. "Nothing. Just saying, but it mattered." It mattered a lot. I started digging. Quietly, I reviewed documents, statements, records I hadn't looked at in detail because I never thought I'd need to. And that's when the truth started to show itself. Ownership transfers, control clauses, legal language that didn't scream theft but whispered it. The penthouse, the heirlooms, the protections I thought were mutual. They weren't, they were hers. When I confronted her, I expected denial, tears, excuses. What I got instead was a smile I didn't recognize. You signed everything, she said. Legally, fairly, if you try to fight this, Ethan, I'll make sure the divorce lasts forever. That word divorce hit harder than any insult. You wouldn't, I said. You're my wife. She leaned back, completely relaxed. That's exactly why I can. That was the night I stopped being a husband and started becoming something else. Not angry, not loud. Just awake. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I didn't beg. I did the one thing she didn't expect. I stayed calm. I let her think she had won. I let her believe I was trapped. Because while Lena thought she had shut every door, she had forgotten one thing. I built my life on details. And details have a way of fighting back. That was the beginning, not the end, not even close. This was only the moment I understood the game I was in. And once you see the board clearly, you don't flip it over. You plan your next move. Asterisk, I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, but because my mind wouldn't stop replaying every moment of the past year like a slow, cruel movie. Every smile, every soft word, every time Lena had gently guided a conversation away from money, away from paperwork, away from anything that would make me look too closely. Lying next to her in the dark, listening to her steady breathing, I realized something that scared me more than losing the penthouse. She had been planning this for a long time. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee. She asked if I wanted eggs. She talked about weekend plans. And that calm, normal behavior confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't impulse. This was strategy. I played my part. I nodded. I smiled. I kept my voice steady. I let her believe I was processing, hurting, confused. I let her believe she had broken me. Inside, something else was happening. I began to watch her the way you watch someone when you finally understand they are not who you thought they were. Every word became information. Every action became a clue. When she left the room to take calls, I listened to the tone of her voice through walls. When she came home late, I stopped asking questions and started noting times she didn't notice. People rarely do when they think they're in control. Days later, she told me she wanted space. She moved into the guest room of the penthouse, the same penthouse she now legally controlled. That detail burned, but I swallowed it. I told myself pain was temporary. Clarity was permanent. I contacted a lawyer. Not one from my circle. Not one connected to our world. I found someone quiet, experienced, a man who listened more than he spoke. When I showed him the documents I had signed, he didn't react the way I expected. He didn't shake his head. He didn't sigh. Instead, he leaned back and said, "Interesting." That word gave me hope. He explained something Lena's lawyer never mentioned. Buried deep in the paperwork was a clause about intent and disclosure. It was subtle, easy to miss, but it required full transparency between spouses when transferring legacy assets tied to family trusts. My family trust. Lena had rushed me. She had framed the meeting as planning, not transfer. She had avoided explaining consequences. And most importantly, she had used her own lawyer without encouraging independent counsel for me. That didn't mean victory, not even close. But it meant she wasn't untouchable. Still, I didn't move. Not yet. I knew Lena, or at least, I knew the version of her I was now seeing. She thrived on control, on the feeling of being smarter, faster, ahead of everyone else. If I attacked too early, she'd tighten her grip and bury me in legal delays just like she promised. So I did something harder. I waited. I let her grow comfortable over the next few weeks. She became bolder. She talked openly about selling one of the heirlooms. She mentioned renovations. She wanted to make changes I was never consulted on. She even joked once during a dinner with friends about how marriage is really just good business when done right. Everyone laughed. ID in single quotes. One night, she came home excited, energized in a way I hadn't seen in years. "I met with the lawyer today," she said, dropping her bag. "Everything's moving fast." I kept my eyes on my phone. "That's good," I said. She paused. "Studied me." I could feel it. You're taking this better than I expected, she said. I looked up, met her eyes, and forced a tired smile. What choice do I have? That answer satisfied her. I could see it. The moment she decided I was no longer a threat, that was when she made her first real mistake. She started talking. Not directly, not carefully, but enough. She mentioned timelines. She mentioned plans. She mentioned names. And one night, after a glass too many, she mentioned something she shouldn't have. Asterisk, the lawyer said you'd never catch it. She laughed softly. Men like you never read the fine print. She said it casually, carelessly, and that was the moment I stopped feeling pain, because pain comes from loss. And I hadn't lost yet. I was still here, still listening, still learning. While Lena believed she was building a future on my silence, I was quietly building something else, something stronger than anger. Proof. Every message, every email, every casual confession. I documented it all, dates, times, words. I became patient in a way I'd never been before. Because revenge isn't loud when it's done right. It's precise. By the time Lena realized I wasn't broken, only quiet, it was already too late. But she didn't know that yet. And for the first time since this began, I smiled to myself, not because I had won, but because I finally knew how. By the time I reached that point, my life had split into two versions of reality. The one Lena saw, and the one I was actually living. To her, I was fading. A man slowly accepting defeat. I came home on time. I avoided arguments. I stopped asking questions. I let her talk. I let her decide. I even let her interrupt me mid-sentence without pushing back. Every small surrender fed her confidence, and confidence made her careless. But behind that calm surface, I was working harder than I ever had in my life. Every night after she went to bed, I stayed awake. I sat at the kitchen island with my laptop, scrolling through documents that used to feel boring and now felt like landmines. Property records, trust histories, old emails from my father, handwritten notes from my grandfather that explained why certain assets were protected the way they were. These weren't just papers anymore. They were my armor. I started to understand something important. Lena hadn't just taken advantage of my trust. She had underestimated my roots. My family didn't build its legacy by being careless. They built it by anticipating storms, by writing rules for worst-case scenarios. And while Lena thought she had rewritten the ending, she had missed the opening chapters entirely. The lawyer I hired began piecing things together. Slowly, carefully, he explained that what Lena had done wasn't openly illegal. It was worse. It lived in that gray space where manipulation hides. But gray areas don't protect you when intent is proven. And intent leaves fingerprints. That's where my patience paid off. Lena loved to talk when she thought she was winning. She loved to remind me subtly, sometimes not so subtly, that I had lost control. She would say things like, "You always hated paperwork," or "This is why I handle things better." And every time she did, she confirmed something crucial. She knew exactly what she was doing. I began recording conversations, not secretly, not illegally, but by steering discussions into written form. Text messages, emails, follow-ups. "Just to clarify what you said earlier," she responded quickly, confidently, never realizing she was building a timeline of her own manipulation. One evening, she asked me to move some of my personal items out of the main bedroom. "I need my space," she said. "Legally, it's simpler this way." That word again. Legally, I agreed without hesitation. I packed my things quietly. But before I left the room for the last time, I stood there for a moment and looked around. Not with sadness, with focus. This wasn't exile. It was positioning. She started spending more time out, more dinners, more meetings, and then one night, I saw something I hadn't expected. She wasn't alone. I didn't confront her. I didn't react. I didn't even feel surprised. Betrayal tends to stack. Once someone crosses one line, the others stop mattering. Instead, I noted it. Another detail, another thread. Weeks passed. Lena began talking openly about selling the penthouse, about liquid freedom, she called it. She even asked me once where I thought I'd live after everything was finalized. I'll figure something out, I said. She smiled, pityingly. That smile haunted me not because it hurt, but because it reminded me how completely she believed her own story. In her mind, I was already erased. Meanwhile, my lawyer uncovered something big. Something Lena's lawyer had either ignored or hoped would never surface. One of the heirloom assets she claimed full control over was still bound by an old family provision, one that required written consent from both spouses and a disclosure statement confirming independent legal advice. I never received that advice, and she knew it. We were close now, very close, but timing mattered. One wrong move could still give her time to lock everything down. Then Lena made her biggest mistake yet. She threatened me again. Not loudly, not dramatically, but clearly. If you try anything, she said one night while pouring herself a drink, I'll drain you in court. You'll spend years fighting me. Years you don't have. She thought fear would freeze me. Instead, it focused me. Because threats don't scare you when you already know the exit. That night, as she slept peacefully, believing the war was over, I sent one email. Short, precise, calm. It was the beginning of the end. She just didn't know it yet. And that was the most dangerous place she could be: confident, exposed, and standing exactly where I needed her to be. The moment that email was sent, everything shifted. Not on the surface, nothing changed there, but underneath, the ground began to move, slowly, quietly, the kind of movement you don't feel until it's too late to step away. I kept playing my role. If anything, I became even more cooperative. I stopped pushing back entirely. I let Lena believe I had accepted my place in the wreckage of what used to be my life. I even thanked her once for handling things so efficiently. The look in her eyes told me everything. Pride, relief, a sense of final victory. That look stayed with me. Behind the scenes, my lawyer began moving carefully. No threats, no dramatic filings, just inquiries, requests, verifications, each one small enough not to trigger alarm. But together they formed a net tightening around the truth Lena thought she had hidden forever. The email I sent that night went to the trustee overseeing my family's legacy assets. It was a simple request for clarification, nothing accusatory. Just a man asking questions about procedures that had supposedly already been followed. Procedures that, as it turned out, hadn't been followed at all. Within days, responses came back, polite, formal, concerned. That was when I knew Lena's version of reality was about to collide with mine. She sensed something was off before she understood what it was. She started watching me again, the way she used to in the early days, measuring my words, reading my expressions. But she didn't ask directly. Control makes people cautious when it starts slipping. Instead, she tried reassurance. You're doing okay, right? She asked one evening, pretending to care. I know this hasn't been easy for you. I looked at her and nodded. I'm fine. I've learned to let go. She smiled, satisfied. She thought she had taught me a lesson. What she didn't realize was that I had learned a different one. A week later, she received a call while we were having dinner. I watched her face change as she listened. At first, confusion, then irritation, then something sharper, fear. Quickly hidden, she ended the call and forced a laugh. Just some paperwork issue. Nothing important. But she didn't touch her food after that. Over the next few days, more calls came. More emails. Her confidence began to crack. She snapped more easily, slept less, started locking her phone. I didn't ask why. I didn't need to. The trustee had requested a full review, not because I accused Lena of anything, but because the records didn't add up. That distinction mattered. It meant the system was doing what it was designed to do. And Lena couldn't scream manipulation when the questions weren't coming from me. One night, she finally exploded. What did you do? She demanded, standing in front of me, her voice low but shaking. I looked up from my laptop slowly, calmly. What do you mean? She searched my face, trying to find the man she used to intimidate. She didn't find him. They're asking about disclosures, she said. About independent advice. About timing. I shrugged. Sounds like routine checks. Her eyes narrowed. You told them something. I asked a question. I replied. That's allowed, isn't it? That was the moment I saw real panic. Not anger, panic, because panic only shows up when someone realizes the floor they're standing on might not be solid. She tried to recover. She softened her tone. She even reached out and touched my arm. "We don't need to turn this into a fight," she said quietly. "We can still handle this." Together. Double quotes together. The word felt hollow now. I gently moved my arm away. "I think it's better if everything is clear," I said. "For both of us." She stepped back like I'd struck her. After that, things escalated quickly. The trustee froze certain actions. Sales were delayed. Transfers paused. Lena's lawyer stopped returning her calls as quickly as before. And for the first time since this began, she wasn't the one controlling the pace. She started making mistakes. Emotional ones. She sent angry messages. She contradicted herself in writing. She blamed her lawyer. She blamed me. She blamed everyone except the truth that she had overplayed her hand. Meanwhile, I stayed silent because silence, when backed by facts, is terrifying. The final notice came on a Tuesday morning. A formal request for mediation and review, citing potential misrepresentation and lack of disclosure. It wasn't a verdict. It wasn't a victory, but it was a door reopening. Lena read it 3 times before looking at me. "You planned this," she whispered. I met her gaze. "You planned first." That was when she understood. Not that she might lose, but that she was no longer safe from consequences, and once that understanding settles in, there's no way to unfeel it. The balance had shifted, and the end was finally in sight. By the time Part 5 began, the house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a courtroom without walls. Every step echoed. Every silence spoke louder than words. Lena and I moved around each other like strangers. Who knew too much about one another to pretend anymore? The mediation date was set. That alone changed everything. For the first time since this nightmare began, Lena was no longer ahead of me. We were standing on the same line now, facing something neither of us could control, and that terrified her. She started trying to rewrite the past. She brought up memories, trips we'd taken, late nights we'd spent talking about the future. She reminded me of the man I used to be and the woman she pretended to be. At first, it almost worked. Old feelings have a way of sneaking up on you when you're tired, but then she'd ruin it. She'd slip, say something sharp, something revealing, something that reminded me this wasn't about love anymore. This was about power. And power, once tasted, doesn't give itself up easily. The days leading up to mediation were tense. Her lawyer finally resurfaced, suddenly polite, suddenly cautious. Mine stayed quiet, confident. He didn't need to intimidate. He had facts, timelines, proof. The night before mediation, Lena tried one last move. She came into my room. She didn't not. She sat on the edge of the bed like she used to years ago, when life was simpler and trust was effortless. Her voice was soft, controlled, carefully emotional. "Ethan," she said, "this doesn't have to destroy us." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I saw the fear she'd been hiding behind confidence. Not fear of losing me, but fear of losing control. "You already destroyed us," I said quietly. "I'm just cleaning up what's left." She swallowed hard. "If you go through with this, people will know. Things will come out." I nodded. "I know, and you're okay with that?" "I'm okay with the truth." That's when she changed tactics. She got angry. "You think you're some kind of hero now?" she snapped. "You wouldn't have anything without me. I helped build this life, and you tried to steal it." I replied. The room went silent. She stood up slowly. "You're making a mistake." "No," I said. "I made that mistake when I trusted you without questions." She left without another word. The next day, we sat across from each other in a neutral room that smelled like coffee and paperwork. No windows, no distractions, just people and truth. The mediator spoke calmly, professionally, as if this were just another case. And for them, it was. For me, it was everything. The documents were laid out, the timeline reconstructed, the missing disclosures highlighted, the absence of independent counsel noted again and again. Lena shifted in her seat. She interrupted once, twice, each time. She was gently reminded to let the process work. That was new for her. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I didn't insult. I told the story exactly as it happened. Simple, clear, honest. I talked about trust, about being rushed, about not being informed, about realizing too late that love had been used as leverage. Lena couldn't look at me. Her lawyer tried to argue intent, tried to say it was mutual planning, but intent doesn't survive under light. And the light was everywhere now. Hours passed. By the end of the session, the tone had shifted completely. The mediator didn't declare a winner, but the direction was clear. Certain transfers would be reviewed, certain assets frozen, certain claims weakened. Lena walked out stiffly, her face tight with anger and disbelief. I stayed seated for a moment longer. For the first time in months, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Not because it was over, it wasn't yet, but because I had finally stood up without shouting, without begging, without losing myself. Outside, Lena stopped me. "This isn't finished," she said. I met her eyes calmly. "It is for me." She turned away, heels clicking sharply against the floor, each step carrying her further from the power she once believed was permanent. And as I watched her walk away, I realized something important. Revenge isn't about watching someone fall. It's about standing tall when they no longer can make you kneel. And the final chapter was coming. By the time the final part of this story arrived, the noise had faded. No more shouting, no more threats, no more late-night arguments echoing through a space that once held love. What remained was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after a storm has already taken everything weak with it. The review process took months. Slow, careful months where every document was examined, every timeline reconstructed, every assumption challenged. I moved out of the penthouse during that time, not because I was forced to, but because I needed distance. Distance from the walls that had hurt too much. Distance from a marriage that no longer existed in any real sense. I rented a small place across town. Nothing fancy, just clean, simple, honest. For the first time in a long while, my life matched my surroundings. There was peace in that. Lena, on the other hand, was unraveling. Without the certainty of ownership, without the confidence that everything was locked in her favor, she changed. Friends stopped calling. Plans fell through. The men she had been seeing disappeared the moment things became complicated. Power attracts people. Accountability scares them away. The findings came in stages. First, the trustee ruled that several transfers tied to the family legacy assets were invalid due to lack of disclosure, the absence of independent legal counsel. That alone cracked the foundation of everything Lena had claimed as hers. Then came the penthouse. It turned out that one critical document, one she assumed was ironclad, had been executed under misleading framing. The language used in the meeting, the timing, the absence of explanation, all mattered. The review concluded that consent had not been fully informed. Ownership was reversed. When I got the call, I didn't cheer. I didn't laugh. I just closed my eyes and breathed. Not because I had won, but because I had survived without becoming someone I didn't recognize. Lena didn't take the news well. She sent long messages at first. Angry ones, blaming ones, then shorter ones, then none at all. By the time the divorce was finalized, there was nothing left to say between us. No apology came, but I didn't need one. What I needed was closure. The final settlement was clean, fair, quiet. She walked away with what she was entitled to, nothing more, nothing less. The heirlooms returned to their rightful place. The penthouse came back into my name. The legacy was restored. But I didn't move back in right away. Instead, I visited my father's old office. I sat where he used to sit. I reread his notes, his careful handwriting reminding me of something I had forgotten during my marriage. Strength doesn't shout, it prepares. Months later, when I finally stepped back into the penthouse, it felt different. Lighter, empty, yes, but honest. I opened the windows. Let the city in. Let the past out. People sometimes ask me if I regret trusting her. I don't, because trust, even when it's broken, teaches you who you are when everything else is stripped away. Lena thought she won when she made me sign those papers. She thought silence meant surrender. She thought love made me weak. She was wrong. Love made me patient. Betrayal made me clear. And clarity saved me. If there's one lesson this story leaves behind, it's this. Never sign your future away just because someone you love tells you not to worry. Love should protect you, not blind you. And when someone tries to take everything from you quietly, the strongest response isn't rage. It's truth, timing, and the courage to stand still until the right moment arrives. That's how I got my life back. Not by destroying her, but by refusing to let her destroy me. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories of betrayal, revenge, and justice. Like this video if you felt the emotions, comment your thoughts below, and share it with someone who needs to hear this story. Your support means everything, and your voice keeps these stories alive.